Good morning, Chair Steve.
Good morning, Your Worship. Welcome. Nice to have you join us.
Nice to be here. Kathy Saunders, can I ask you a question before we start? Maybe not. Morning, Maureen.
It's afternoon now.
Well, as always, I'm brought to account thoughtfully and appropriately. Thank you. So noted.
Seeing that it's 12:02, I will call the 8th meeting of the Civic Works Committee to order. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing and advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489 extension 2425. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact cwc@london.ca. At this time, I will ask for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Your Worship.
Thanks very much. Unless it's simply to receive under deferred matters 5.1, there is one issue relating to 745, 747 Waterloo Street. If it's merely to receive, I won't declare a conflict. If there's anything more than that, then I will.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, then I would like to move to the consent items. I have had no request to have any of these items pulled, so I will ask now for if anybody would like any of these items to be pulled. Seeing none, then I'll look for a mover of the consent items and a seconder, and then we will have questions and comments after that. Look for a mover, Councillor Cassidy, second, Councillor Lewis. And then I will take the roll of the vote, all orally, and I'll go to Councillor Cassidy.
Are we doing questions?
I apologize. I jumped ahead. My fault. Even though I said I wouldn't, I knew ahead, and then I just did it. I will take questions and comments right now. Councillor Pelosi, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for trying to expedite this meeting. Just a question through you to staff on items 2.2 for the Digman Drive area EA, and recognizing that this area is going to include different mobility choices for all road users, including pedestrians and cyclists. This area is a substantially used corridor for cyclists out in the area, and just looking through you to staff of if they could just mention what kind of cycling infrastructure could be considered within this plan.
Thank you, Doug McCrager through the chair. Yes, the Dingman Drive improvements scoped out in the environmental assessment have a strong focus on active transportation and include boulevard bike paths, so separated from traffic by a barrier curb. So a comfortable facility for riders of all abilities and ages. In addition to that, there's also sidewalks, so it would convert what is currently really a rural road with no active transportation amenities to a complete street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Councillor Pelosi.
Thank you. One follow-up question to Mr. McCray, as we've discussed it in the past, where the bike routes come out to the Digman pumping station. It's currently a fence that greets cyclists once you get that far out. Can part of rectifying that and connectivity be part of this plan as well as we move forward?
Mr. McCray.
I'm not totally familiar with that issue on the parks pathway, but can definitely look into it. I do recall that I think there are property challenges, but it is an area that we will definitely want to connect better as it develops and requires better connectivity. And we're working with the Ministry of Transportation to improve the overpass of Dingman Drive over Highway 401 so that it is a better active transportation connection under the Ministry of Transportation's project. And so tied to that is a better connectivity with the Murray Mills stormwater pathway. And so yes, we'll work on that for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. And I went right ahead voting, even though I had a question. You just caught me off guard too. And my dog was barking at the same time. So the new world, right? So I also have a question about 2.2. And thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Pelosi for bringing this up and also stopping the vote. And my question is also about the active transportation. So I have a question for Mr. McCray, because there are upcoming road improvements in Ward 5 as well. And so I want to talk specifically about the roundabout or the traffic circle that is being proposed for this intersection and how it will interact with the active transportation, because I know cyclists aren't always big fans of traffic circles, but I personally like them. I think they're a good way to slow traffic down, to prevent the kind of fatal collisions that you see in a regular signalized intersection. So please tell me how the active transportation is going to work with this traffic circle, and could we possibly see these kinds of things happening in other areas of the city where roundabouts have been discussed or proposed?
Mr. McCray.
Yeah, the design of roundabouts has evolved, and with particular focus on active transportation. A reasonable example to point to is the roundabout at Wonderland Road and Sunningdale Road, where there are essentially two options for cyclists. More confident cyclists can ride through in the general lanes and behave more like a vehicle, or if they're not comfortable with that, there are wide multi-use pathways in the boulevard, so a little slower but more suitable for a less confident, or a cyclist looking for a more comfortable traversing of the roundabout. Those connections, those multi-use pathways are particularly wide sections of the sidewalk that facilitates walking through the roundabout. In conjunction with roundabouts, the new tools provided by amendments to the Highway Traffic Act, enabling pedestrian crossovers, can also give pedestrians the right of way of making the crossing of the approaches. So those elements are included in the preliminary design for the roundabout at Dingman Drive and White Oaks Road. Obviously, in the longer term, there would need to be greater connectivity to the surrounding sidewalk and cycling networks. And it's envisioned that those would come into place around the time of the project, and also in conjunction with developing land development, particularly in the northeast quadrant of that intersection. Thanks.
Councillor? That good? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have it moved and seconded, and I would like to call the vote this time. So I will go to Councillor Cassidy first.
Yeah, yeah.
Your worship?
Yes.
Councillor Van Meerbergen?
Yes.
Councillor Pelosa?
Yes.
Councillor Lewis?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. I see no scheduled items, so I'd like to go forward to items for direction. 4.1, we have an added, moved by Councillor Pelosa and seconded by Councillor Lewis. So maybe I would like to go to Councillor Pelosa to present this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll speak to it, and then certainly I believe Councillor Lewis will as well. This is an ask for an active transportation manager, for staff to look at it and come back with a report of how feasible this is. As per the item before you, we believe this ties into many things the City of London is trying to do and Council's direction that was already set. This is not increasing headcount, but rather a reallocation of staff from one department to another. This will allow us to review the cycling master plan that's already scheduled, have a specific lens on looking at the cycling infrastructure that's there, the condition of our city's assets, and connectivity for those using active transportation. This project, and ask for an active transportation manager, has already been supported by our Cycling Advisory Committee, CycleLink, Western University's Active Transportation Society, and the London Environmental Network. They came forward through the city's multi-year budget to make this ask. So I'm excited for it, and what can be done in the city for all our planning and projects coming forward, of just an extra focus on active transportation and making London accessible for all users.
I have comments or questions? Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps the mover or the seconder could respond to my query here. I think I heard that this would be a net neutral, this ask. This won't actually generate new expenditure. Is that correct?
Ask Councillor Lewis to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Van Meerbergen. That's correct. We're proposing a reallocation of resources, including staffing resources. As all members of council may be aware, there are certainly some unfilled positions in different service areas. Our suggestion, although this will come back as a report from staff, but
Leo, line 1, please. Leo.
Well, hopefully Leo gets that call. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for just a moment. Leo had my attention, but this is proposing as a suggestion, for example, that there are unfilled positions in the smart cities area, one of which might be potentially reallocated from planning to engineering so that we're moving from thinking about active transportation to implementing active transportation. But it's not talking about actually adding to the size of the municipal staffing complement, just looking at opportunities to use some of the positions that we're not using right now in a way that moves forward this active transportation agenda, which although important for cyclists and certainly something that we've had a lot of positive feedback from the cycling community from, I think it's important that we also recognize that this would tie into pedestrian safety and uses there as well. This is not about, this is more about bringing active transportation into the overall transportation planning so that we're not siloing things off and we're not doing one-offs. And you know, as controversial as it is, I'm going to use it because it's a very easy example. We're not doing one-offs like the King Street bike lane. We're doing a planned network that integrates our cars, our bikes, our pedestrians, and our transit in a plan so that when we're building new growth or when we're renewing old growth, we're planning all of that together so that it's an integrated transportation network.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you very much for that. And on behalf of Leo, 1,000 apologies.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. And I want to thank Councillor Pelosa and Councillor Lewis for bringing this forward. I think it's time, it's past time to do something like this. We've been talking about our transportation master plan for, I think it was created in 2010 or something like that, the one that we are currently working from. And it was the first transportation master plan that actually included a whole system approach and didn't just talk about roads and cars, but talked about transit, talked about pedestrian connectivity, talked about cycling as part of an overall transportation system. And so it's time for this to have an individual engaged in the active transportation side of things. So I'm happy to support this, and I'm very pleased that the councillors have brought this forward.
Any other comments or questions? So we have it moved and seconded. I will call the vote. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes.
Mayor Holder.
Yes.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Yes.
Councillor Pelosa.
Yes.
Councillor Lewis.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
I'll move on to 4.2. We have a request for delegation status on a future meeting. I would look for someone to make a motion to approve that. Councillor Cassidy, seconder. Councillor Lewis. Any questions or comments? Then I will call the vote. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes.
Mayor Holder.
Yes.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Yes.
Councillor Pelosa.
Yes.
Councillor Lewis.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
We'll move on to 5.1, the deferred matters list. The mayor has indicated that if we do anything more than receive it, he will call a conflict. Look for a motion to receive or do something else. Councillor Pelosa moves to receive.
Yep, movement to receive.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cassidy. Any questions or comments? Then I'll call the vote. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes.
Mayor Holder.
Yes.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Yes.
Councillor Pelosa.
Yes.
Councillor Lewis.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
That concludes the items on the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Lewis. And Councillor Van Meerbergen seconds. Do we do a hand vote here? Hand vote. I see all on my screen yes, and the two in council yes. Meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Chair. Thanks.